Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Around the Slice. I am here today to preview the Buffalo Bills' final preseason game of the 2025 NFL preseason. So, without further ado, let's get into it with the official game information, what time, day, how you can tune in, all that fun stuff. So, officially, the Buffalo Bills take on are at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for their final preseason game. As I just mentioned, it is in Tampa Bay. It takes place on Saturday, August 23rd at 7:30 p.m. So technically another primetime / night game, if you will, just like the Bears game last week. Hopefully it doesn't go nearly as bad. And this is kind of interesting / unfortunate, no matter how you look at it and what have you. But if you're local, you can watch on CBS. Unfortunately, if you're not local, can't watch it. Just unfortunate circumstances. So what I mean by local is if you live in the area of New York, upstate New York, Western New York, any of the big markets like Rochester, which is where I live, Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, any of those big markets, you can watch it no problem on CBS. But if you're not local to those big markets, if you will, then you unfortunately can't watch it. You'll just have to keep up, online or something. Anyway, so before we get into any of the big game details, any of game preview aspects, if you will, unfortunately, we have some pretty important and significant injury updates to get to. So I'm just going to lay them right out for you. This first one breaks my heart. My heart sank when I saw this. We don't know any of the deeper developments, but right off the bat, Trey White was carted off the field on practice on Thursday in Orchard Park, is now no more St. John Fisher. If I see a headline come out and my worst fear of is confirmed, I'm just gonna be sick. My heart will be broken for that dude. I love Trey White. I've said this on this podcast many times before. One of them became a true Bills fan in 2017 when he was drafted out of LSU. DBU, as they call it in LSU, because there's always producing DBs and corners and safeties. Trey was the first Bills player I fell in love with. Obviously, he took a year away from the Bills with the Rams / Ravens, where he looked kind of awful, decent at best, and now he's back at the Bills. Obviously, we know towards ACL in 2021, towards Achilles in early week 3 or week 4, I can't remember, in 2024. And I hope my worst fear isn't confirmed, so we'll have to see that on the front. Another corner, it's not looking good for Max Hairston. I was hoping to get a more positive update, as I'm sure you guys were watching and listening and whatever platform you're on. I do appreciate it, but it's sounding more and more likely as time goes on here that rookie first-round corner, 30th overall, Max Hairston will start the season on IR, which would, of course, knock him out for at least required the first 4 games of the 2025 NFL season. McDermott kind of echoed the other day that Hairston is still a long ways away, in just 2 weeks or so, give or take, a little under that, give or take from the season, that he is still a long ways away. That's not something you love to hear so close to the season, even like to hear bottom line, so that's unfortunate. And then this one kind of annoys me, but Cedric Van Granger, I'm almost 99% sure. Now, this is just a personal hunch I have. Hasn't played a single snap in training camp, hasn't practiced a single day, single anything in preseason, nothing like that. Cedric Van Granger, it looks like more and more likely they'll start the season on PUP, which would knock him out the first 6 games required, or IR at the very least, which would knock him out the first 4 games required. Either way, I think he's going to be on some type of list to start the season. Now, I don't know how the logistics of that would work. Are they going to place him on IR now? Probably not. Actually, I know for not, because that would knock you out for the whole season required. If you carry him for the 53-man roster past cutdown day, past 4 p.m. in a few days on Tuesday, August 26th, and then place them, you'd only have to miss 4 games with the IR and designate him to return 6 games with the PUP, same thing. But he will be on some type of list, unfortunately, which will provide opportunities for some younger guys and a couple aging veterans that I'll get to later on. But my general thoughts going into the Bills' 3rd and final preseason game. I don't really care about scores, I'd say. I don't really care about record in preseason. But it would be nice. We're 0-2 right now. It would be nice to pick up a dub, pick up a win, and see 1-2 next to our resume, next to our team record for preseason and the official scoreboard. But past that, more importantly, I'm looking at key roster battles. I cannot wait to see what depth players really do push for a roster spot. And spoiler alert, McDermott announced the other day that Josh Allen will not play whatsoever a single snap in this final preseason game, which marks the first time in NFL preseason that he won't play a single preseason snap in his entire career. He's at least played a quarter or so, half or so at the very most in his career. So that's not unfortunate because I've been saying for the past 3 or 4 years, what the hell does he need to play in preseason for? Just to risk injury? I don't think so. But I'm really looking forward to see some kind of hotbed topics, if you will, hot button roster battles. Really looking forward to seeing them play out in this preseason game as a whole. So that's just my feelings going in. Past, just like it would be nice to pick up a dub and be 1-2. Players that have a few players that are confirmed to not be playing in this preseason game, and then a couple other players that are likely not to play. We have a trio. We have a couple of receivers that are kind of like definitely not going to make the roster. One, they're injured. One wide receiver, Grant DeBose. He's kind of like a big body, 6'2", 210, 6'2", 215, somewhere around there, what have you. He got injured the day after he was signing his first practice. He'll probably release as waived with an injury settlement or something like that. And then wide receiver Steven Gosnell, who I haven't heard a peep from in actual preseason games, but by all accounts, he had a really fun and entertaining training camp at St. John Fisher and carried over to Orchard Park in Buffalo. Orchard Park specifically, excuse me. But yeah, I wish we got more game action from him, but likely won't play. And then why does he Curtis Samuel? We know he's surprisingly could a surprising cut be on the table for him. Probably not, just because they would have to eat a ton of money. They actually lose significantly more cap space than they would gain. Could a surprise trade be on the table for a 5th or 6th round pick at the very least, pick swap, whatever, what have you? I think it could be. And then why does he with Khalil Shakir? McDermott's confident that he'll play week 1. I don't know, because a few weeks ago he sustained a high ankle sprain, which is usually, a 4 to 5 week recovery timetable / timeline. So we will see. That's going to be pushing up right against it. Center Cedric Van Granger. This is just getting annoying at this point. I guarantee he'll be on some type of list, as we just talked about. Interior offense lineman Alec Anderson. There's another backup center candidate that's not going to play at all in preseason. And then we have a couple of linebackers that likely won't even make the team. Shaq Thompson has a chance, but right when he got rolling in training camp, he sustained a pretty significant hamstring injury from what it sounds like and from what I can glean and gather, if you will. And then linebacker Keontae Jenkins, who's kind of a lean linebacker safety convert hybrid, if you will, out of Virginia Tech. And then a couple of corners, corner Max Hairston and corner Trey White, and then safety Jordan Hancock. If Max Hairston starts the season IR, which unfortunately is sounding likely. If Trey White starts the season IR, which unfortunately is sounding likely. If safety Jordan Hancock starts the season IR, which unfortunately is sounding likely. We're have to rely on guys for CB2 like Jamarcus Ingram and Dane Jackson battling it out, but for safety depth, like there's none. Like DeMar Hamlin isn't a preferred starter. Cam Lewis isn't a preferred starter. He's more of a jack of all trades, a more veteran version of Jordan Hancock. We could have 3 freaking DBs start the season on what the freak is it called? IR. I kind of had a brain fart, blanked there for a minute. Sorry about that. And we know McDermott's echoed concerns over the past week or so with Cole Bishop. Like, he ain't happy with him either. So I would just sign Justin Simmons to start next to Taylor Rapp for a stopgap year, if you will, and then move the hell on. But position battles to watch Saturday versus Buccaneers. This is the 3rd and final preseason game, so I got a lot of them. Number 1, not order of importance. I'm just going from offensive order to defensive order. Number 1, depth wide receivers versus Curtis Samuel and or Elijah Moore. I don't think both of them get cut / traded. I think one of them makes this team. If you want to go the trade route to save money, you trade Curtis Samuel. If you want to go the cut route and not have to eat money, you cut Elijah Moore. But I think the depth receivers in Tyrell Shavers, Laviska Shenault, and KJ Hamlin for the return ability, and maybe Christian Wilkerson. I added him here just for a puncher's chance, but I think it's really down to the 3 of Tyrell Shavers, KJ Hamlin, and Laviska Shenault for that return ability, because we know Brandon Codrington ain't making this roster. I say, could we see a surprise trade in Curtis Samuel, a surprise cut in Elijah Moore, because Curtis Samuel, we know the injury stuff, and he hasn't done anything this training camp / preseason. But Elijah Moore, I was hoping he would pop in preseason more. And actually, he's popped for all the wrong reasons. Last week against the Bears, he had a couple drops. Last week against the Bears, he read his blocks wrong, and he struggled to kind of get open and run routes. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the top three are not three. I know the top three are absolute locks in no particular order, but Clush Gear, Keon Coleman, Josh Palmer, and then you have stupid. I don't even know why, but Gabe Davis is returning to Buffalo. Sean McDermott talked to him, not returning, but he had a visit. I'm gonna be sick if we sign him. I guess as a fourth or fifth depth receiver, it's fine, but it sounds like even if he was signed, he's not healthy right now. I don't know. We'd start season on pop. It's very confusing to me. What the hell the point of that is, but yeah, I mean, Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore, we got to see something from him. But, Tyrell Shavers absolutely deserves to be on this roster. But does someone else make it as the wide receiver 6 to be KJ Hamler or LaVisca Chenault for kick and punt returning duties? Who knows? Developmental practice squad tight end. Now, coming in the offseason, the incumbent here was Zach Davidson, because their top 3 locks for the actual 53-man roster are Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and Jackson Haas. But the Bills always love to have a developmental practice squad tight end. You thought that would be Zach Davidson, no competition, but Davidson's have for a depth tight end that's pushing to make the practice squad for the third year in a row. He ain't doing himself any favors, guys. He's having the worst possible preseason you could have for a developmental practice squad tight end. He's had multiple penalties thrown on him. He's had misread some blocks. He's had multiple drops at this point in the first 2 preseason games. It's not looking good. And then Kaliki Latu has kind of popped in preseason. UDFA out of Washington, pretty big school, has kind of popped in preseason and practice, and whether it be at St. John Fisher or what have you with Orchard Park and what have you and whatnot. But I like, Kaliki Latu, if you want upside at this point, like how many years are you going to try this? How many years can a player be on the practice squad where you just say, like, okay, forget it? Like, luckily there's been some success stories there with Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram, mainly in year 3, finally cracked the roster, but Zach Davidson has no path to actual roster. So I think Kaliki Latu is giving him a real run for his money. He can cement that with a good performance to be in the practice squad, the developmental tight end, and get called up here and there. Backup center spot, SVPG, Cedric Fairprint Granger, likely starting an IR pup, some type of list. Alec Anderson, he had his knee scoped, but that ain't nothing small, guys. Like, he might start season on some type of injury list as well. So I think this backup center spot is absolutely between Kendrick Green and Dan Feeney. Kendrick Green's been able to kind of like pop in the past, if you will, and he's won starting jobs each of the last 2 years, specifically with the Steelers in 2023 and last year start the year before he fractured his leg or whatever, with the Texans in 2024 last season come week 1, but he's never been able to hold that down. But I think there's a huge opportunity for him here between Kendrick Green and Dan Feeney. Dan Feeney can only play center, but Kendrick Green can play center and either guard spot. I think his best fit is center, but you'd love to have that versatility, just like an Alec Anderson, who will start the season on some type of list with Cedric Fairprint Granger. I'm very confident in that, unfortunately. And then final O-lineman spot, who is the second or third tackle, depending on how you look at Tyler Grable, between Ryan Vandermark and Chase Lunt. Ryan Vandermark, I've said this all preseason, all training camp, he has the advantage of being the experience, if you will, with Aaron Kromer, but Chase Lunt has the higher draft pedigree, higher draft capital. It wasn't anything crazy. It was a 7th round pick, I believe. 6th round pick. No, 6th or 7th round. It doesn't matter. Late day 3 pick. He has the higher draft pedigree, higher draft capital than Vandermark. And something interesting, Aaron Kromer loves versatility in his own lineman. Look at everybody except Cedric Fairprint Granger. They can play 2 or 3 spots on the bench. Alec Anderson can be like guard and center. Kendrick Green, guard and center. And Ryan Vandermark's a right tackle only, not even both tackle spots. He's a disaster at left tackle. Right tackle, direct backup to Spencer Brown. But Chase Lunt, I thought he was exclusively a left tackle, but he's getting work at right tackle and getting work at both guard spots. So if he can continue that versatility, I think he does get the final nod over Ryan Vandermark. I'm going to be very interested to see who plays where. Does Ryan Vandermark get his feet at left tackle? Does Chase Lunt continue to get work at guard? who knows? And then final DT spot. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the top 4, we have locks. Let's assume there's no surprise trade or cut, which I alluded to last week, a few days ago with Daquan Jones. Let's just assume he's on the roster. Moving on. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, TJ Sanders, Dion Walker, who's been highly impressive, is absolute locks. Lair Ogunjobi suspended, Michael, a whole other thing. Those top 4 absolute locks. Jones, go over it again. Jones, Oliver, quickly, Sanders, and Walker. They usually like to keep 5 defensive tackles. So I think the 5th defensive tackle spot is honestly between Dwayne Carter and Zion Logue. And Zion Logue is a really, really nice run stuffer. If he can be the direct backup one tech to Daquan Jones, that would be awesome. Well, Deion Walker's kind of that. So the developmental guys, that 5th defensive tackle, 52nd and 53rd roster spot or what have you or whatever. But I think it's really between Dwayne Carter and Zion Logue, which is sad to say because Dwayne Carter was just a 3rd-round pick last year specifically, but I think he's gotten severely outplayed by like legitimately 4 or 5 D tackles on this roster, and it's kind of sad. And then linebacker depth, a couple of injuries to linebackers, but I still think those guys can make the rosters. We have Shaq Thompson and Keontae Jenkins who've been injured, and then Eddie Lufocio. But if I'm being honest, former Army captain Jimmy Charlo, he was featured on the latest episode of Hard Knocks. Came from nowhere, just like Joe Andreessen and Buffalo Joe. But Jimmy Charlo, I'm rooting for this kid. I'm rooting for this guy. Like, he's got to make the roster, in my opinion. I think he's comfortably better than Eddie Lufocio. I mean, he's a maniac in special teams. We absolutely know the top 4 locks. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, Jordan Williams. I'm confident at this point in saying Buffalo Joe Andreessen's a lock. If they keep 5 linebackers or 6, that 5th or 6th guy could be Jimmy Charlo. I think he's been better than Shaq Thompson due to injury, been better than Keontae Jenkins due to injury, and just play-wise and depth chart-wise been much, much better than Eddie Lufocio. And he's a maniac in special teams. And you know how much Chris Tabor is a big name, special teams coordinator, first year with the Bills. Sean McDermott, they emphasize special teams through and through, game in, game out, rep in, rep out. And Jimmy Charlo has been a maniac in special teams. So please, please make the roster. CB2 job, this is sad, but due to Trey White and Max Harrison injuries, potential IR stints are both from the start of the season. We're looking at CB2 battle between Jamarcus Ingram and Dane Jackson, which isn't very enlightening or encouraging in my opinion. And then Rasul Douglas, who you have to very well might have to bring back. That's not very encouraging either. But for in-house guys, Jamarcus Ingram, high-end special teamer, might have to be thrust in a full-time CB2 role, at least for the first 4 or 5 games of the season or whatever. Dane Jackson, I don't like, you know, my relationship with him. It's not even hit or miss, it's just very miss. So those guys might have to be, thrusted into roles that they're not expecting and we're not expecting. 2 players on offense that I'm most looking forward to seeing versus Buccaneers. Wide receiver Elijah Moore, you got to step up. For lack of a better term, Tyrell Shavers, KJ Hamler, and Chris and Laviska Shenault to return possibility, they're right on your ass. Tyrell Shavers especially is right on your ass. He deserves to be a roster spot. Elijah Moore, you got to pop, man. You got to step up. And if he's playing late into the 4th quarter of this game, that's very concerning. That's another thing. Players that are playing late into the 4th quarter of a final preseason game are firmly on the roster bubble. Interior offensive lineman Kendrick Green, with Haley Anderson out, with Cedric Van Granger out, it's time for him to overtake this role opposite over Dan Feeney and be the backup center to Connor McGovern. And then tackle Chase Lunt. I said Ryan Vandermark really only a right tackle. Who plays where? Does Lunt continue to get action at guard? We will see. I think very well will. 2 players on defense I'm most looking forward to seeing versus the Buccaneers, for one reason or other. Defensive tackle Dwayne Carter. I explained the top 4 locks. You got to overtake this 5th D tackle spot opposite Zion Logue. I know if he gets caught, you will get claimed. There's no way in hell he's going back to the practice squad for the Bills. But maybe that's not the worst thing in the world because he's just like out of place and outplayed by several guys this preseason. So you got to do something as a former 3rd-round pick just a year ago. Linebacker Jimmy Charlo. I just said I'm rooting for the kid. I really want him to make the roster as the 5th linebacker. And the Bills should only carry 5 linebackers because maybe that means an extra O-lineman, 9th or 10th lineman, or a 6th receiver. So, or a 5th D tackle in Zion Logue / Dwayne Carter. You don't need 6 linebackers. 5. I want it to be Jimmy Charlo after the obvious top 4. He's outplayed several other linebackers in my opinion. And then corner Jamarcus Ingram. I like, he has much more. he has more upside than Dane Jackson at this point. I think Dane Jackson is a third or fourth at best reserve corner who plays special teams. I think Jamarcus Ingram was comfortably, and now that Quentin Morris is gone, comfortably our best special teams player last year and heading into the season. But maybe he plays a little less special teams because he's thrust into the CB2 right off the bat. Keep the seat warm, if you will, till Max Harrison / Trey White get back from their respective injuries. Trey White open for, fingers crossed, positive there. Anyways, guys, that was my official preview for Bills Buccaneers. I'm not going to do a recap of this game on Monday, just because I don't think there's no point in that. I will kind of throw hints from the game and give my thoughts here and there when I do my official final 53-man roster projection on Monday, just a day before cutdown day. So official final 53-man roster projection for the Buffalo Bills will be on Monday, August 25th. Can't wait for that. Let's see how this roster really shakes out. So anyways, guys, you can follow me personally on Twitter, as always, at AWagner13. You can follow the show on Twitter at Around Slice, and I'm a fantasy football analyst for Fantasy and Frames. It's been awesome. Go over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out all our written work. We have all the division previews up there for myself, Kyle, Drew, Rhett, the whole team over there. It's been awesome. For me specifically, a few weeks ago, I did a couple weeks ago, I did an AFC East preview, so go check it out if you're looking for fancy relevant nuggets there. I've been keeping track 5 dynasty risers from each preseason week 1, week 2. I'll do the same for week 3 coming up before final cuts are submitted and come in. Follow subscribe to the Fantasy and Friends YouTube channel if you wouldn't mind. Lots of great content over there. I'll be making appearances there from time to time during the season, I'm sure. So yeah, you can of course watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. We're really in the end game now, if you will. So can't wait. It's gonna be a blast this season going forward. Final cuts, all that fun stuff. Thank you for the support as always. I will see you on the next one. Bye.